Hi everyone, and welcome back to Mental Models for Managing Change. I am Ali Juma, and I'm glad you are tuning in. In our last episode, we explored the Pareto principle, a model that reminds us not all effort is equal. This episode was about clarity and focus, how to identify the few things that create the biggest shift in change. Today, we're adding another layer, a way to navigate where and how to direct the energy when things feel overwhelming or out of reach. But before we dive in, let's quickly revisit what a mental model actually is. A mental model is a way of seeing, a mental framework that helps us interpret complexity, solve problems, and make better decisions. You can think of it as a map for navigating uncertainty. And like any good map, the clearer it is, the more grounded we become, even when things around us are moving. Which brings us to today's model, the circle of control, influence, and concern, a game changer for how we manage pressure, uncertainty, and scope in complex change. Where does it come from? This model was popularized by Stephen Covey in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, but its roots go back to Stoic philosophy, particularly the teachings of Epictetus, who said, "We cannot control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond." At its core, this model helps us separate what we worry about from what we can actually influence, and from what is directly in our control. It sounds simple, but it is often transformational. The model. Imagine 3 concentric circles. At the center is your circle of control, the things that you can take direct action on, your behaviors, decisions, conversations, and how you show up. Surrounding that is your circle of influence, things you cannot control outright but can shape over time. Think relationships, team culture, buy-in, and support. And around both is your circle of concern, all the things you care about but cannot directly affect, market conditions, structural changes, and decisions made far above you. The power of this model lies in where you choose to spend your energy. When we fixate on what we cannot control, we feel powerless. But when we anchor ourselves in what we can do, clarity and progress usually follow. Why it matters in change. In change work, it is easy to spiral into the circle of concern. Why aren't they engaging? Why is leadership doing it this way? Why isn't the system better designed? These are valid concerns. But if we stay there too long, frustration builds and traction fades. Linking this back to the Pareto principle, even when your circle of control, there is 20% that creates most of the shift. So now we're not just asking what matters most, we're also asking what is within our reach. What can I actually do today or this week to move something forward? This is how focus becomes sustainable. A story from the field. I once worked with a mid-level manager who was stuck. A transformation program was underway, the messaging was unclear, and her team was growing anxious. She told me, "I can't fix the comms. I'm not in those meetings. I don't even agree with the pace." We mapped her circles, what was in her control, how she created space for team conversations, how she named uncertainty without fueling panic, how she acknowledged what they could shape and what they needed to ride out. Over time, that team didn't just cope. They become one of the most adaptive pockets in the organization. Not because the system got easier, but because they got clearer on where they stand. How to use the model. Here are 3 ways to use this model in your work. Use it in planning sessions. When things feel stuck, map out the concerns, then ask, which of these are within our control or influence? 2. Use it with teams in distress. If morale is low, use this model to create boundaries. Help people distinguish between what is worth their energy and what is worth letting go. 3. Use it personally. Change can feel deeply personal. When you're overwhelmed, sit with this model for 5 minutes. You will often leave with a calmer mind and a clearer action. So here's your reflection for this week. Think of a situation that feels heavy or frustrating and ask, what is in my circle of concern? What is in my circle of influence? And what is truly in my circle of control? Then do one small thing in your control that could ease pressure or create clarity. That one action might be the spark that moves something bigger. Thanks again for listening to Mental Models for Managing Change. In our next episode, we'll explore leverage points, a model from systems thinking that shows us where to intervene in a system for the greatest effect. It is where tiny tweaks create transformational outcomes. Until then, I'll leave you with this. You cannot control the wind, but you can adjust the sails. Until next time. Oh, and one more thing. If you're enjoying this mini-series and want to go deeper into the human side of change, conversations about leadership, culture, and the psychology of transformation, you might enjoy some of the longer episodes on my other podcast stream, The Inner Game of Change. It is where I sit with thinkers, leaders, and practitioners to explore what really takes to lead change from inside out. You will find those episodes right here in the same feed. Thanks again, and talk soon.